Welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. This is Debbie Ronka, and I just love that you're here with me again for another episode. Well, the word that we hear a lot, seems like almost every day, is the word resilience. Can we develop it? Are we even born with it? And really, how does resilience make a difference in my life? So, to help us unpack this topic, I invited my guest, Shylla Webb, to come on and not only share her personal experience with resilience, but also her professional expertise in what resilience is all about. Shylla is the CEO and the founder of Inner Matter, and she specializes in stress management, workload fatigue, team dynamics, and so much more. She's also an educational consultant with a background in special education, administration, and leadership coaching, as well as mindfulness and yoga. Well, Shylla, thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'm so grateful that you are a guest on the Transition Bridge podcast.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. It's such an honor to be here with you. I just
Oh,
admire the work that you do.
oh, thank you so much. Well, as I shared earlier, I've learned so much from you in your walk and in your journey with resilience. And I always believe when someone has experienced something themselves, they have so much more wisdom to offer to others. They like taken our own personal pain and taken it into someone else's life to be able to help them in those times in life where we need to step into or step up into resilience. And I found this quote, which I think kind of sums up a little bit about everything with resilience. Resilience is the capacity of a system, an enterprise, or a person to maintain their core purpose and integrity in the face of dramatically changed circumstances. And that's a quote by Andrew Zolli. And so just looking at what you do with educational systems and leadership, and also on a personal level, resilience covers every aspect of life.
Mhm. Yeah, it certainly does. And it's not always easy when we're faced with adversity. It's not always easy to maintain like who we are at our core and stay true to that and feel balanced and centered throughout it all. Because life can easily throw us many curveballs all at once.
Oh, it does. And I have found that when the unexpected or those things confront me, sometimes it makes you forget who you are or even doubt who you are because you're so overcome by what's in front of you.
Mhm. Yeah, and sometimes those bigger situations when we're doubting who we are, it is really an opportunity to look within and to see if we're still that person too. Because I
Yeah.
find myself like, a lot of times, a lot of adversity is really all about a difference of values. And my deep rooted beliefs and values are being challenged at the time. And so it's an opportunity for me to go within and wonder and really question, is this a belief system of mine that's still healthy for me and that I should still be operating from? And then if the answer is yes, then I can stay true to that and take action. If the answer is no, then it might be time for me to update that belief system or that value that I have. And that applies to my life more now today. So I can talk about like one instance. I grew up with my mom cleaning the house every Saturday morning. So when I moved away from my home, I believed that I needed to clean my apartment every Saturday morning. And she dusted, mopped, scrubbed the kitchen, scrubbed the kitchen, the bathroom, everything got cleaned top to bottom. So then once I had two babies, 13 months apart, I was still trying to clean a big house from top to bottom
Oh my,
every Saturday morning while mothering two babies. Well, you can just about guess I nearly killed myself trying to do that.
yeah, I bet. Oh my gosh.
It was finally the boys' dad that asked, like, why are you even doing this to yourself? Who says you have to clean the house every Saturday? Like, you know what? You're right. I just grew up with that being modeled for me. And so then, therefore, I thought that that's what I had to do. And I'd be less of a mom or a housewife if I didn't do that. And so I've never thought it, never thought about it. I just went into action, doing what I've always been taught.
Yeah, it's like we take another person's standard and make it our own. It's not that it wasn't a good standard. It was something that worked for her, but then sometimes we adopt other standards or model things that are not doesn't work. And
Mhm.
I know I grew up with six brothers. So we had seven kids, and it's funny, every Saturday we cleaned the house, but there were nine of us doing it. So we could divide and conquer. So yeah, to try to take that project on all by yourself and have two babies. My goodness. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a great example of just looking within and saying, you know what, this doesn't work for me anymore. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like a reevaluation of your own ethics and things in life. Is it my ethic? Is it my parents' ethic? And how do I individualize myself to be doing the things that I feel good about? Yeah, so I love that. So, do you have, since you're talking about personal stories, do you have any others, personal stories about resilience where maybe something unexpected came along that maybe rocked your world and found yourself needing to become resilient?
Oh yeah. So I think my pivotal moment in life happened when I was 13. My stepdad at that time had been sick with cancer for quite some time. He had leukemia, and he was given 48 hours to live. And I had heard that before. And as a young child, to conceptualize all of this is really tough. I hadn't ever experienced death, even the loss of a goldfish or an animal.
Mm.
Um, and he had been given 24 to 48 hours to live in the past and had always surpassed that. So this time around, I was eating lunch with my friends, and the woman from the office came, tapped on my shoulder, and said, "Your mom's best friend is here to take you to the hospital."
Oh,
And I remember standing up, and I had my tray, and I had walked back and forth in the lunchroom several times, not even remembering how to do a routine that I had been doing for the last few years in this school, the same routine. And someone grabbed my tray, and then they had to guide me to my locker. I was just so completely out of sorts, and got into the office, and she gave me a hug and said he was still breathing when I left. We have to hurry. And we got there, and he was still breathing, and I was able to say my final goodbye to him.
oh,
Yeah. And from that moment, life dramatically changed as I had known. He was the family member that was just the rock of the family. And back then, we didn't talk about grieving. We didn't talk about psychology like we do now today. And the importance of mindset, and what the grieving stages even were. So, yeah, at 13, I was left to navigate this somewhat on my own. And it's not that my family wasn't open, it's just everyone was doing their own grieving in their own way. That when something like that happens, it's hard to remember everyone else when you're in such pain yourself. And so it was one of those times where I went through high school. Somehow I made it through high school. I still look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. It was a lot of dark days, but then a lot of bright days of, typical childhood and high school years. So I had the competing part of it, but the darker days, or those heavier emotional moments, were becoming more and more. And I just kept thinking there has to be a way out of this. There has to be a way out of this. Because at one point I was really happy. And now several years later, I should feel like that again.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. So that is probably the pivotal moment that started the self development journey for me at such a young age. I was probably 17, 18. Really started getting into the psychology. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? What's happening? Why is my family responding to this death in the way that they are? Because it was very different and unique to each person,
yes, yes.
which I honored, but yet I felt like I couldn't bounce back from it in the way that I wanted to, or I had this mindset that I was expected to. I had this mindset that I was expected to just move on, be happy, feel secure within. when the reality was I wasn't feeling any of that. So there was this big gap between what I had expected and where I wanted myself to be to where I really was.
And you were asking a lot of deep questions for such a young person, the big why questions. Why is this happening? And just the self-awareness that you had at that time. And I'm sure those years where you just emotionally felt in turmoil, just those questions, why is this happening? Why are we grieving that way? And, there's something about that time, that generation. I understand because I remember my oldest brother when he passed away. Everybody grieved differently, but we never grieved together. And we never had closure together. And so I've watched the dynamics of my own family change over the years because there was never that bonding and the connecting or the understanding of what really happened and how to move forward as a family. So you kind of feel like everyone was left on their own. And and I'm grateful for this season and time where there are grief counselors. It's important to navigate together to understand what happened, how it's affecting you. And so, because now you have a new normal, I never like to use that phrase, but it's the truth because what you knew before now has drastically changed. And then so the resilience is now calling on you to step up and to bring some healing to those areas so that you can move forward and not stay in the past. Do you think that's what resilience does? It helps you move forward?
Absolutely. I think that with resilience, and going through my own journey and watching other people, I worked in schools for many years working with students with emotional behavioral disorders and their families. And a lot of them have had to overcome or are faced with really adverse situations. And I think that the moment we start losing hope is the moment that the crumbling happens.
Mhm.
And that's where things really, really start to fall apart.
Yes, because without hope, we have no future, right? We can't
Right.
even believe in a future because that's the hope of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if we can look at that crumbling though, what I've learned in my life that many times what I wanted when it crumbled, it was that opportunity to rebuild in the way that I wanted life to be or needed life to be. And so that crumbling in the moment didn't feel so good at all. Like, and boy, do I fight it sometimes. Like talk about, one of the things I think that makes us really resilient is our ability to accept things. And
Yes.
it's not like saying things are okay, but accept it as it happened and be able to move forward, taking a healthy step in a different direction, maybe, or something like that, where, some of us will resist and push against it for a long time, even though it's like the relationship, you should have let go of it years ago. And you probably didn't experience this, but I have, a relationship that I knew I should have let go of, but
Uh-huh.
I kept in it because I thought that it was the right thing, and it was this belief system that kept me there, even though it was never really healthy to begin with.
Sometimes we see things with our soul that is different than what our natural eye is showing us, right? And we wrestle with that because we in our soul we could probably see potential and possibilities. So we may overlook some things in a relationship for the hope of change. And I think that happens to all of us in any kind of a relationship, even if it's just like a pure relationship
Mhm,
as well. We sometimes hold on to friendships that no longer serve us. They become um, we're just in different lanes, and yeah, so it's hard to let go because especially when you have a compassionate and a kind heart,
mhm,
it is hard to let go. And what I've learned, I'm looking at this one quote: persistence and resilience comes only after being given the chance to work through difficult problems. So resilience really doesn't show up. It doesn't become a part of us until we're given opportunity to really process a difficult problem that dramatically changed circumstance. As I always talk about, like transitions of loss, the things that we never ask for in life, that we're blindsided by. Um, that in that moment we have to find that resilience to move forward. And how do we do that? So when you're talking with leaders or teachers, in your business, because how do you help people develop resilience?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things is really to assess whether or not a person is in acceptance around the situation. Again, it's not acceptance of the situation as it happened, but accepting that it happened and how my ability to be able to acknowledge how it affected me and whether or not I'm in resistance to it. So when we come around and understand it, it happened to me, and now I need to do something with it. It is really a life opportunity. It's a learning opportunity. It's a growth opportunity. If I can look at it that way versus stay stuck in, like, maybe I feel I've been a victim of something. When I stay stuck there, I don't get an opportunity to move forward. If I'm a victim, I stay in fear. I stay maybe in those deep, dark emotions that I might have around a situation. I stay in grief. Where when I come to, like, okay, this is being presented to me because it's a life lesson that I need to learn, I start going within. So I think one of the dangers is a lot of times when we're not resilient, I find that those are people that are actually, their emotions and their well-being is very dependent upon the external experiences that they have.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, like, and when we think about like how unpredictable our environment can be around us, and if I then allow my internal well-being to be based off of that, I don't know how I'm going to feel in a given moment, because one person could say something and it can totally take over my entire internal being.
The power of words, right? The power of words. That, oh, yeah, and I
Yeah.
love John Maxwell. He always says we're not products of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories that you read of people that are not in the best of environments, either growing up or in the workplace, but they don't let that define who they are. Like that, that to me is resilience. Like you were sharing, Shyla, is looking in to find your strength, who you are, not believing what someone else is saying about you, but say, who am I? You know,
Yeah.
I have this quote by Helen Keller. Gosh, I just so admire this woman. And it says, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of all she had to overcome, like that's a resilient person to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, some of my volunteer work is working with victims of domestic violence, and I think that that quote made me think of what they go through as well. And I think of all the suffering that happens being a victim of, someone that's been abusive, and usually they're in those relationships for a long time. And one of the things when I'm leading the support group, I talk about, what can you feel grateful for? I'll ask them that question, and oh boy, do I get some mixed responses there. And I know this going into it, of course. And I do always preface it when I'm the facilitator, I will challenge a little bit. So be ready for that and make sure that everyone feels ready for that little bit of push, you know. And the question that gets brought up is, how can I feel grateful for being beaten?
Mm,
And that is a really good question,
yeah, absolutely.
because who would feel grateful for that? But what they come around to realize is that they're grateful for all the life lessons that they learned from it. So they finally, victims of domestic violence, they go through at the victim stage, at the very beginning of victim stage, they're very helpless. They've given up hope a lot of times. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They're very, very scared. And little by little, they go from like literally like this in the meetings to every single week, they're sitting up a little bit taller, a little bit taller, a little bit taller. So what they finally find is they find their backbone, and they learn how to take a stand for themselves and take a stand for their lives.
Oh God, just the visual of that is so powerful. Oh my gosh. And I can imagine being asked that question. I think I may want to come up and shake you.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
imagine, because when you go through something so traumatic, it's like how there is no gratitude in that, and yet that is almost the key to unlock the door to get you out of that prison of victim mentality, right? And that we don't want that victim mentality. It happens, and we're not at fault for it. It just happens, but we have to, as you probably teach people, to change their mindset to look within and not look at the circumstance, at what happened, to redefine who they are. Is that your goal?
yeah, because I think like one of the ways that the people that are most resilient, Brene Brown did a lot of research on it, and she found what they have in common is gratitude. And I believe that the mindset of someone that's more resilient, they end up to be more solution focused versus problem focused. I
Ah,
think our body doesn't know the difference between reality. We can bring ourselves into a deep meditation of something that we fear, and our body is going to respond as if we're actually living the event. If you've ever watched a scary movie that gets you on, or action packed movie that has you on edge and like your body tight and tense, it's
mhm.
because the brain really doesn't know whether or not it's realistically happening in your environment.
I'm glad you brought up the brain, because how does the brain, work with resilience, or how does resilience work with our brain?
Yeah. I think the words that we use is almost everything. And if we master our mindset, we actually solve the majority of our problems day to day, to be quite honest with you. So it's really just getting honest with myself. Like, what is the story that I'm telling myself around this situation? How am I? Am I playing a victim? Am I feeling a victim? And if you are, that's okay. Sit in victimhood for a little bit. Sit there, because I think that's important too, that we honor the emotions that are around it. I feel hopeless. And then get all that out. Just garbage dump it, whatever way. I think that's one of the ways that we complete the stress response cycle, is that stress builds, 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 and we need to release. And if we don't intentionally release it on our own, it's going to be released one way or another maladaptively. And that's usually when we blow up at someone. That's when we shut down and just avoid, and we absolutely can't pull ourselves out of it. But if we can acknowledge that before it ever gets to that point, it gets beyond our control. We've all had those moments where we've just kind of lost our stuff, and it's like, oh, I
Mhm.
didn't mean to do that. That's how you know that you weren't acknowledging your stress response system and releasing it intentionally in a healthy way. But an ugly cry releases it. High intensity workouts release it. I think a lot of times people think, I'm stressed, I need to sleep.
Mm.
Yes, you need to sleep, but you actually really need to move. You need to move that energy out of you some way, somehow. That buildup needs to go. When we can dump the buildup, we now put our brain into a really kind of peaceful state.
Okay.
It releases those positive hormones, the ones that are going to relax us. Think about after you blow up, you're like, oh, that felt good. Like you might have guilt and regret about whose feelings you hurt, but yet your body actually feels relaxed.
It
So
does.
we can do that ahead of time so that it is healthy. We don't then have guilt around that that release. Then what we do is we put our brain into that problem solving state, and we can actually focus on where we can take action. Just even getting the energy to take one simple step into a direction where we want to go to an ideal outcome, versus feeling like in a stressful state we feel like we have to take it all on.
Mhm.
Stress amplifies everything. When we're calm, we can actually step back and look at the situation and just look at this little piece, this little piece. We can start looking at things separately, and it feels a lot more manageable.
That makes sense, because when it's all boxed up in stress, we can't dissect that. We can't really understand it or what's the like problem solve. We just can't problem solve. But I like that approach. And we don't realize like that stress does affect our brain.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, very much so in our bodies and our body's ability to like operate, and just even for natural, just for our organs to operate. It
Oh, tell
stress
me about
depletes
that.
it and dries us up literally. Like we need more water when we're stressed than day to day.
I
So,
never thought about my organs. Oh my gosh. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it will it literally slows down brain functioning, but it slows down the way like your muscles get tight and
Mhm.
constrict, which creates blockage. And if you think of your blood vessels going, and if your muscles and everything, your whole body's locked up, that flow of what you need isn't happening. So a lot of times fingertips are cooler, our toes are cold. We literally start cutting off circulation.
That totally makes sense to me. And I know our body absorbs trauma, it stores it there. So, yeah, and stress would be a part of that.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm just thinking about how we store anger, in parts of our body, and it manifests itself maybe differently, but we don't realize it's our anger that's causing us to misfunction or dysfunction in certain ways.
Yeah.
So, would you say that then there is a process that you take people through? Because it sounds, first of all, I love the fact that sit in the victimization, like own that. We should all be allowed to have that moment of, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but like, woe is me. Like,
Mhm.
this is what has happened to me. This is what happened. And we need to all allow that because that's reality. And then are you saying like they take ownership and then there's healthful steps that you take them through so they can navigate forward and get free?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about like the woe was me, I think that's really healthy. If you were to fall and scrape up your leg, you're going to stop and look at the blood. You're going to look at the damage that happened. We're going to be okay with the oozing blood, the dirt, everything that's piled on it. And then we're going to start cleaning it up, and then we're going to bandage it. To me, it's the same thing. Like take time to just acknowledge all the wounds, whatever that is, in a healthy way. It might be through a journal dump. Some people, so everyone, you have to know yourself. What is the healthy release? Some people, I'm an introvert, true introvert. I am not going to pick up the phone and feel better by sharing my deep, dark, I don't know, it is not always dark, but my deep like wounds to someone else. That doesn't feel like release to me. What feels like release to me is to sit there and cry and just, and when I cry, and I'm going to say everyone, when you cry, cry with the intention of whatever it is that's really bogging you down is also released from your entire body.
Mm.
So
Yes,
that
have
whatever,
a purpose. Tears really do have a purpose.
yeah, yeah. And I think so it takes wherever that sadness or that anger is built up, it's now allowing my body to release it through the tears. There are times where I'm so mad, I got to yell it out. So I literally just go scream in my pillow. If my kids are here, right, I want to be more appropriate. So I will put on songs and I will sing it out. But again, as I'm singing it, it is with the intention that it's releasing through my voice, whatever that built up stress or emotion is. So
So there
those are,
might be different ways to release this. That's great. That's great news.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't always have to be that high intensity workout. So it's one giving them tools, a variety of tools that they can use in order to release that, that built up of stress.
Mhm.
Then with the organization, we really have to start talking about what are realistic solutions. Same thing in a family system. You're up against the same problem and pattern. We have to all pull together to talk about what are the solutions that we see fit for the good of the group that everyone can be a part of. And that's very realistic. Sometimes leaders or parents, we do this top down approach where we implement solutions that me as a leader or as a parent, I can't even keep up with. I can't even follow through with.
Okay.
So it's really,
So it's good. It's good to get, yeah, feedback across the everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And as simple as possible. I mean, less is more. We live such complex lives, and it really doesn't have to be. And
Well, we
it's really just, go
go,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say just very, very simple, and that's where we start with behavior change, because behavior change is really, it's very challenging. And most of us, while we're not a product of our environment, that's where we come from. When we get into adulthood, we are a product of the multiple environments that we spent time in. And then it's our job to reassess that. What parts of that, our past, do we want? And what do we want to keep? What's working for us? What parts of our past do we need to now let go of
That's true.
and develop a new habit around?
I don't know if I can remember this quote, but it was interesting. It was like the phone rings, or it's like a voicemail that, says something to the past, like, I no longer want to listen to you. And it's like saying, hello, future, what do you have to say? It's like
Yeah.
answering the phone, no, past, I don't want to listen to you anymore. Hello, future, what is it that you want to share? And that's
Yeah.
what we should, look at our life and do that evaluation. I really believe in mindset checks. We check the oil in our car. We need to check how we're thinking and why
Mhm.
are we feeling or acting and behaving the way we are. And it could be connected to something that we never became resilient in, something that we never processed. Um, there's this quote here that resilience is very different than being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fall, but you keep going. And I think that would be a great definition for resilience, because from what I'm hearing you share, Shyla, it's like, first of all, we need to not be numb. We need to experience those emotions. We need to experience that negativity, the sadness, the grief. We have to feel it. We have to hurt. We have to fail so we can actually get back up. And so, yeah, there's so much to resilience. And I don't think we take that word and associate it with healing. Some people just think of resilience as strength, but I think there's so many layers to it.
Yeah, I think in our society here in the United States, it's really been associated with alpha culture.
Say that again?
I think it's really been, resilience has been associated with alpha, like
Oh, alpha. Okay.
alpha
Okay.
culture.
Gotcha.
And
Dominant, dominant. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to be tough, right? Well, what tough guy sits there and listens to his heart or emotions, and that's how, like, it's presented. But the reality is for our bodies to fully release it, we do have to go through all of it. What do I think about this situation? What do I feel about this situation? What are my opinions that are happening right here? What are my beliefs? What are my values?
Do you think that I always like to know and understand what prevents us from doing certain things in life? So when situations happen in life and we need to accept this change, um, what is it that you feel prevents someone from even beginning to process becoming resilient? Do you think it's fear?
Well, fear, because it requires someone to truly do the process. It requires us to go within versus blaming external.
Mm.
And once I go within, I now have to take ownership for what's mine to own.
Ah, that's true. That's
And that
eye-opening too.
sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't
that
like
is
that.
not fun.
I'd rather blame someone else.
Right?
It's your fault. Yeah, because I think sometimes we just don't want to know.
Right?
Like, I don't want to know, because if I know, then I have to deal with it. And
Yeah. And if I go within, then I have to face myself and my own deep, dark shadows, the parts of me that are not working, and I know they're not working.
yeah, I
And
mean,
then I
that's
got to
the
take,
truth.
right? Then I got to take 100% responsibility for my part of it. And none of that is really easy, because we all know, especially the first times we're doing it, we're going down a rabbit hole and we don't know when we're coming out. So,
But you know that the truth will set you free, right? And so
yes.
we have to face our own truth of what happened, or our part in it, or not, maybe not even our part in it, but like, what do you do from here? And I think that's the big step. Okay, all this happened, or this event just happened in my life, but now what? And to me, that's like where the transition comes in. We have to move forward, because we stay in that same chapter of our life and never read like the next chapter, we'll never discover the things that are waiting for us to live out. Because when adversity happens, it doesn't mean we're done. It doesn't mean we're finished. We might be on a pause
Mhm.
just to allow grief to come, to fruition, allow ourselves to be healed, to be strengthened. But as we move on, there's like another discovery of something else in our life. I just believe as long as we're walking on this earth, there's something else for us to do. There's more of who we will become. And I believe that's the resilience, is that rope to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think going through all those phases that we talked about also brings closure to a situation. And
Mm,
that's where I think if I keep blaming the external world and I'm wanting apology from someone that is not going to apologize to me, I will then be left with an open loose end, unresolved conflict. But if
true.
I can actually go within and start coming around to acceptance that this person is not going to apologize to me and that I can still forgive
Mm.
without that apology, because forgiveness is for me, and I can learn what I need to learn from this unfortunate event, then all of a sudden I start bringing closure to that situation and I can move forward without carrying all the heavy baggage to it.
That is so good. What is that quote? The transition tunnel is not large enough to bring all that baggage with us. Like, we're supposed to
Oh,
leave it outside, not take it with us. And talking about like forgiveness, and I think expectations, when we expect maybe someone to apologize to us, because we kind of do that. I mean, I know there's times where I'm thinking, well, that person should say they're sorry, or do they not even get it? Or but as long as I have that expectation of that person, I'm always setting myself up for disappointment or
yeah.
frustration because that expectation's not being fulfilled. And it may never get fulfilled because maybe that person just is not capable of apologizing. And so, hearing you say, I have to just accept that I may not get an apology and forgive that person, just the freedom that brings to like just take that and put it in another box or just totally get rid of it. Yeah, I like that. That's so true.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that we, even when we forgive someone, it doesn't mean that they need to stay in our lives in the capacity of which they have been,
Mhm.
depending on the situation. That's the other thing that I think, especially working with victims of domestic violence, they often think that if I forgive, then I'm going to allow this person back in, and the reality is no, you don't have to. um, that we can still be in relationship. Like if they have to co-parent with their abuser, they can still be in relationship with them. But they can still stay centered in that, with that space that's now created, versus when they were living under the same roof, or situations like that.
Yeah, the power of boundaries, right? I think boundaries make us feel safe.
Hmm.
People think of boundaries as a unhealthy thing, but it is the most healthy thing we could do. It
Yeah.
frees us up inside
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
in situations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think resilient people, they have those internal boundaries. They're going to allow themselves to feel all the feels, go through all the thoughts, everything with those really challenging situations, but they're going to actually quickly shift. They're going to put boundaries on it, like, okay, I'm done with this. Now I'm going to start focusing on, what do I have power over? What can I control? What solution, what's one step that I can take towards one possible solution here? And they're going to actually focus more of their energy and time on the solution and start creating the life that they want or the healing that needs to happen or things like that, then they are actually going to stay stuck in the problem and all the feelings that came with it.
So would you say that's the main characteristic of a person who's resilient, someone who's solves the problem and stops focusing on the problem?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, to maintain hope, again, once we've lost hope, that's when the real crumbling starts to happen. So I think that they also have hope for a better future. They can stay with that. And I think that they get to a point where there's all of a sudden this shift where they can see the positives behind what happened. As tough as that situation was to overcome, and even tough as it is in the moment, they can still see the good that is coming from it or starting to come from it. And that's where then it shifts into like a full-fledged gratitude. At first, it's kind of like, well, maybe, and then they'll go back to like that tough emotion or, all the pain that it has caused. And then the next thing it's almost like the sky, the clouds opening up a little bit more and more and now letting the sun shine down. That's where I think like gratitude is like all of a sudden we have clear skies. Now again.
Does gratitude unlock emotion?
I think gratitude drops us into our heart.
Mm.
And that's where I think it opens up our heart center and really makes us more powerful. Our brain will lead us astray all the time. I always tell my clients, be so careful of your thoughts
Mhm.
because it's going to tell you, it's going to lie to you all the time. Like it's going to tell you a lot of bad stories happen up here where, right?
Well, we keep those memories going and they keep talking. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And heart, like dropping down into our heart is a place of love. It's a place of forgiveness. It's a place of compassion. Dropping down into our gut drops me down into further down into the internal wisdom of my body.
I agree with you. I believe the heart speaks, and
Mhm.
we don't get quiet enough to let its voice share. And sometimes you're right. Not sometimes you are right. We think more with our mental, we believe more of the thoughts. And if we have a negative mindset or a toxic mindset, all of those thoughts don't serve us well, but our heart is telling us something different. So that's great advice. That's great advice. Listen to your heart, because really out of it comes the issues of life. So everything is in there and it's trying to lead and guide us. So
Yes.
Shyla, I just love everything that you shared today. So, oh my gosh, we can just talk forever about resilience because I think it's something, I don't think we're born with it. I think it's something we discover, we develop, we have to choose to embrace, we have to choose to allow resilience to complete us so that we can move forward. And I just love how you unpacked all of that today. And so, before I ask you this question, I do love the name of your company, Inner Matter, and it just sounds like this is what you do. So, if someone wants to reach out and have a conversation with you, what would be the best way for that to happen?
I would say go to my website, fill out the contact form, and
Okay,
then myself or my assistant will be back in touch with you shortly.
great. And I will have Charlotte's website in the show notes. And I'm sure, as you can hear right now, she's definitely a heart that you can trust and a heart that understands and has the tools to help you come to that place of resilience so that you can heal and move forward. And so, in closing, Shyla, I want you to think about that person right now who's been rocked by the unexpected in life. And now you want to throw them a lifeline of hope and strength. What would you share?
Hmm. I would say in the evening, take some time by yourself and drop down into your heart and just think of the day and think of 3 good things that happened that day. 3 good things that you can connect with and write that down. See if you can open up your heart a little bit more, feel deeply in your heart for the good things that are happening before you go to sleep
Mm.
so that it downloads into the body and helps rewire the brain and it really sets us up hopefully in the morning, then we're waking up with those three good things or just that feeling, the good feeling, and we're starting our day that way. There's been studies that have shown that there people that have done that just for 2 weeks feel a higher satisfaction in life, feel more fulfilled, feel a higher level of happiness for 3 months.
Oh my, that's a
Yeah.
great process.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And we all need to be given tools and hope to be able to process. So I really appreciate that. And I'm going to close with this quote from Catherine Devire. I hope I said her name right. There is an overcomer within you. Sometimes we don't know it until adversity confronts us. Like tiny seeds that have potent power to push through hard ground and become mighty trees, we hold innate reserves of an unimaginable strength. And so, for all of you that are out there, both Shyla and I want you to believe in you. Believe that you are worthy. Believe in the value that is you. And don't trust in what someone else has done or said to you that negates that value, because that is not truth. The truth is, you are valuable. You have such a divine purpose. You have such a unique purpose because you're still here on this earth and you have not completed that which you have been born to do. And so I pray that this episode will find you wanting to become resilient, to believe, to step forward, to receive that healing, and to begin to open the package that's in front of you, the gift of life that is still yet for you to open. Start untying that ribbon. There is so much for you to embrace, to enjoy, because you were created for a purpose. Don't stay where you're at. There's so much more. It's time to turn the page. There's another chapter. There's several chapters that are full of excitement and journeys and experiences for you and your family. And so thank you, Shyla, for being here with me today. I just love your heart, your soul, everything about you. And thank you for adding so much value to the audience today. And I want to thank all of you as my transition tribe, as you come in each and every week, as we embrace, grow, and are transformed by the purpose and the power of the transitions in our life.